There are many things that you can hope for in life, but surely the most precious of all is love. If you are lucky, you will fall in love during your lifetime. If you are even luckier, someone will fall in love with you during your lifetime. If you are truly blessed, you will love and be loved back at the same time. This is the story of Harry Schmidt and his luck, both good and bad, in love. Harry Schmidt was 42 when love first found him. He lived alone, having shared a house with his mother until her death 2 years previously. At 82, Mrs. Schmidt had retained a startling amount of independence, and thus Harry required far more looking after than she did. Indeed, this situation would have continued for several years, had it not been for the unfortunate incident with the shoe. Despite 35 years of being told not to do so, Harry had the unfortunate habit of kicking off his shoes at the end of a working day. Harry worked as a postman, and therefore his feet were always begging to be relieved from his shoes after hours of walking. Regrettably, Harry often kicked off his shoes in unfortunate places. Thus, during the years, Mrs. Schmidt had needed to be ever more vigilant in order to avoid Harry's wayward footwear. Many accidents had been avoided due to Mrs. Schmidt's careful approach over the years. But it was, perhaps, inevitable that in the end a shoe would be her downfall. As a postman, Harry was usually home in the afternoon. However, on the ill-fated day in question, he had decided to go out to watch a football match and had been delayed in getting home due to the bus breaking down. The fates would further conspire in orchestrating a fuse outage at the house, which would lead the independent Mrs. Schmidt to attempt to navigate her way down the cellar stairs, with only a candle to light her way. Naturally, this would also be the day that Harry had kicked off his old work shoes for the last time, for just the day before he had purchased a new pair of sturdy black boots and was wearing those instead. His old shoes had been haphazardly abandoned as so many times before, but this time with catastrophic consequences. So it was that all these coincidences conspired against poor Mrs. Schmidt to ensure that when she weaved her way through the small corridor to the cellar door and pulled it open, her foot clipped one of the abandoned shoes as she took her next step, and this small action was enough to unbalance her. At any age, a stone staircase is a difficult adversary, but for 82-year-old Mrs. Schmidt, it was a fatal one. Harry would never know the trouble his misplaced shoe had caused, for the very step that had caused Mrs. Schmidt to unbalance was the step that knocked the shoe into a tidy position. When the fuse switch was flipped and the light was restored, paramedics could only conclude that Mrs. Schmidt had panicked in the darkness and taken the stairs too quickly. In this way, Harry was spared from a lifetime of guilt, but, sadly, not from the loss of his beloved mother. Therefore, at 40 years of age, Harry Schmidt was finally forced to stand on his own 2 feet and face the world. And this he did. For a while, Harry would feel quite content with his progress in the world. However, Harry Schmidt was yet to face his biggest challenge: love.